Yo, what's up, everybody? Today, just going to be going over some data analysis stuff. I'm on Garage 61 right now with a couple of laps from a Bathurst race last night that I participated in GT4 cars. I know a lot of people don't understand quite how to read this sort of information, so I figure I'll sit here and kind of help some people out. This sort of stuff is really useful for trying to better yourself as a driver. It is definitely one of the best tools that you can have, whether you're sim racing or racing in real life, both ways. It's definitely something that can really help you get over the edge and find lap time. So first here, as you can see, my lap is a 214.746. And Brian Coxon's lap, which will be in blue, is a 213.664. So almost a 1.1 second gap between the two laps. These are both of our best laps from practice. I feel like I can go faster than that now since I've analyzed this and understand what I've done wrong. But I will go on ahead and show you guys a detailed way of how to navigate this software and learn yourself. So first, let's start in Sector 1. So as you can see here on the left, our gap in Sector 1 is roughly identical. 13 thousandths of a second separate us between uh, in the first sector here out of of 6 here at Bathurst. iRacing uh, has a split difference to real life, where most other sims they just use the 3 sectors that the normal real life track uses. Whereas in iRacing, they use a ton of different splits. The Nordschleife, there's an absolute metric ton of them. Here at Bathurst, there are 6. So the first split is from the start finish line down the first straight here, about halfway through the straight once you get to the bottom of the they're right at the crest or at the bottom of the crest before you start going back up again for turn 2. So as you can see, by looking at the time difference here, you can see at the very bottom right here at this point is our breaking point. So we're equal. But then you can see the lap time completely change at the apex of the corner. But then once we get past the apex, you'll see that I slowly start coming back again towards them until we get to the end of the sector. Now the reason I started losing time here is I shifted slightly early. You can see right here, these are the gears that you're in, is this graph here. And you can see like here, I shifted right on a good time, but then here I shifted a little bit early. This is with the McLaren GT4. With the McLaren, you want to use every single RPM that you can get at the end of these gears because of that being the power band of this car. If the limiter was just 150 RPM higher, this car would have a ton more potential. Just because that's where the power band of this engine is. And that's just how the McLaren is. So we'll go back here and see, okay, so how did he gain a tenth and a quarter on me? 125 thousandths of a second. That's a lot. I mean, a tenth is a tenth. Like that's a ton for one corner on the apex. So we'll look here. Okay, so this top graph here is our speed. So as you can see, I start scrubbing off speed earlier. And my apex speed, my minimum speed, is actually before the apex here. It's 61 miles an hour right here. So you can see right here on turn in, I'm at 61 miles an hour. Okay. Versus his minimum speed is right around the apex, but he holds it, his 65, he holds it all the way through this apex before he starts getting on throttle and accelerating out of the corner. And what happens here is our speeds converge right on top of the apex curve. So as you can see at the center of the corner, we are both at 65 miles an hour. But then I start accelerating out of the corner before he does, and before he gets off of his minimum speed and goes to 66 miles an hour, I'm already at 67 miles an hour. So I'm roughly 2 miles an hour faster than him on exit speed. So you can see this here in our throttle application. So you can see I get off throttle slightly before he does, but then here's your spike for the shifts, and then you can see I'm on throttle very much way before him. You can see I'm hitting 100% throttle before the apex of the corner. So right here, for a nice little span, I'm at 100% throttle. I get off throttle slightly, just 15% whenever I hit the apex curb, just so that I don't trigger traction control. And then I'm immediately back on full throttle again so that I can get this great exit that I get. And then down the straight, you can see that we equalize on speed as we go down the straight, as you can see on that top graph. So now we look here at the braking. So you can see I brake harder earlier, but then also hold my brake for a lot longer. So you can see here, this is where my minimum speed really starts to dip in comparison to his coming up towards the corner. Because he is already trail braking off of the brake pedal, and by here, he's almost off of the brake pedal, just 4%, and then starts holding that trail brake until he finally gets all the way off the brake pedal here, and then just a small spike right here as he's going across the apex curve. Whereas me, I am harder on the brake for longer, and then trailing off of that brake more aggressively and getting back in the throttle earlier. So as you can see, there's not really much of a gap here between when my left foot comes off of the pedal and when my right foot starts compressing. There, whereas with him, you can see here, he's off of the brake pedal and then he's coasting through the middle of the corner just for a minute, just for a few thousandths of a second. And then as he's coasting, he's slowly making his way down to his minimum speed, and then he starts picking up the throttle again, one big spike, off the throttle, and then back to full throttle. Which obviously means that while we both were basically equal here, I think there's more potential in making this corner faster with his driving, with his corner versus mine, because he gains a full tenth on the apex. So all he really needs is to just get on throttle earlier. You can see his minimum speed, like right here, like right in here, he should be able to be getting on throttle more aggressively. Whereas here, he's having to spike it up and down and then back to full throttle way after whenever I get to full throttle. Now, another thing that you can look at here, this is your steering wheel angle. So it shows you when you're centered, and then shows you the degree of turning angle that you have, and then back towards center. So as you can see, his blue line is very smooth, a nice, wonderful curve here with a little bit of movement here as he's coming across the exit curbs, getting oversteer, whatever it may be. Versus mine is very erratic. You can see it's up and down, up and down, up and down all the way through here. Now, this is something that personally is a driving style flaw that I have, and I try really hard to fix it. So you want to have this nice smooth curve that Brian has with this blue line versus my jagged red curve. The only time something like what I'm doing is viable is if you're driving something that is very twitchy on the nose and responds well to micro adjustments of the wheel. But as you can see, throughout the corner, I'm just consistently twitching the wheel back and forth, which is not very helpful. And so therefore, I feel like I could have made more potential out of this corner with just a smoother turn in and then a smoother straightening of the wheel to be able to get that power down a little bit earlier and maybe be able to brake just a little bit later. So now we're going on to Sector 2. Sector 2 is the second corner and then out of the cutting and then as you come up the hill. So this is one of the major places that I lose time to Brian. Now, once again, you can see there's a complete difference in our driving styles taking these corners. So coming into turn 2, he brakes slightly earlier than I do, just by about, I'd say, what's that, 10 feet or so? 10 to 15 feet is the difference between when he brakes and when I brake. I brake slightly later than he does, and the speed's coming down, speed's coming down, speed's coming down. Right here, the speed converges. Now, this is at the turn-in point. So how does the speed converge? Well, if you look here, I'm going all the way down to 100% brake pressure while he's going to around 94, 95% brake pressure. Both of us hit ABS. I hit ABS repeatedly, and then as I'm turning into the corner, see, I hold brake hard, and then whenever I go to turn in, I snap the brake off hard and start turning the wheel into the corner. So this small difference in braking here accumulates as we get through the apex. So as you can see here, we're both full throttle, but because he was able to carry so much more speed, he is able to really just kill me on the exit of this corner. So he's roughly 2.5 miles an hour faster on the exit of this corner here, and is able to hit fourth gear earlier and get the car straightened up a little bit earlier than I am, which gives him roughly a 2/10 gain before the cutting. So that's a huge margin in such a fast corner. I mean, this corner takes like 5 seconds to get through, and that's 2/10 right here. Maybe not even 5 seconds. This is just a couple of seconds. You got your braking zone here, and then into the corner on exit here. That's in 1,000 feet, right? Or yeah, in 1,000 feet, that is a tenth and a half. It's a big, big margin. So now we come into the cutting here. So you can see we're both flat through the first left-hander into the cutting. But then once again, you can see he starts braking earlier than I do, and I start braking a bit later. But I go to full 100%, whereas he stops right at that 94 range. And then he starts trailing off of the brake earlier, whereas I hold on to it longer, turning into the corner. But as you can see right here, I get onto the throttle a lot earlier than he does. So what this does is this also once again gives me a better exit. If you look up here, you can see while my minimum speed is lower than his by about 3 miles an hour. Right here he hit 55. So 2 miles an hour slower minimum speed. We converge, and I'm on throttle before he is, so I have the better exit here. But on this particular lap, I hit the bump on the right coming out of the right here. There's a bump right beside of the curb, so you actually want to swing out. You can see on this blue line here that I took a little bit tighter of a line coming through here versus him swinging out a little bit more. If you follow my mouse, he swings out a bit more here so that he can avoid that bump and get a better line through here. So I get a small TC cut right in here, and that's where I lose all of my speed, and he starts actually pulling back away from me again. So you can see here, like, you can see a big jump in time lost right here from where my minimum speed is a lot lower than his. But then you can see I gain some back here, and I'm set to gain all the way up the hill until that TC cut happens, and then I'm losing again. Right, so there's sector 2. So now we go on to sector 3. Sector 3 is the run from the going up the hill and then back down around through the grate here and then through McPhillamy. Now this is a very tough section of track in a lot of cars. A lot of people underestimate this section of the track because they're usually driving GT3 cars around here. In GT3 cars, most of them at least take the grate flat, if not through McPhillamy as well, depending on the setup. So taking these cars through here flat is near enough impossible. There, at least in the McLaren, it is very difficult to take this section flat. And the reason being, just simply, the cars understeer more because they don't have nearly as much aerodynamic downforce. So they don't have enough grip through here to be able to keep the nose in and make it through. So as you can see, coming into this corner, he lifts off earlier than I do, but as you can see, he doesn't lift all the way off throttle. Now this is something that I did work on in laps after this, but during the race I had damage, so I wasn't actually able to beat that 14.7. Like I said, I think I can go a good bit faster than that 14.7 now, even before this data analysis. I think maybe a 14.4, 14.3 is something that I'm fully capable of. But regardless, we'll see here that he takes a bit of a wider line coming over the top of the grate, which allows him to get a earlier, shallower exit or entry into this left-hander. And you hear it all the time at Bathurst. You have to drive over the grate. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a picture on screen right now of what the grate looks like. And that's why I call this entire corner the grate. I don't know if this is actually what the corner is called. That's what I call it. Because it's easy for me to identify because you aim for the grate. You hit that grate and then you turn in at that grate and you just have to pray that you make it. So you can see he's off throttle a lot less than I am, so my minimum speed is quite a bit lower. And whenever you're going this fast, I mean we're going 115 miles an hour minimum speed for me through this corner in a GT4 car. That's a very fast corner for a GT4 car. So as you can see, he's carrying quite a bit more speed than me, so I'm draining time that way. And then once again, I'm also just lifting off a little bit too much going through McPhillamy. You can see he lifts off earlier than I do, but I lift off later and for a lot more percentage of throttle. And you can see where the dip and minimum speed through McPhillamy is. I mean, at the apex, I am a good 4 to 5 miles an hour slower. That's a lot. That's a massive gap in minimum speed, especially with the same car. So now you can see coming out of McPhillamy, you can see right here as we crest to go down Skyline and through the best part of Bathurst. I am a little over half a second down. So now we jump to Sector 4, the shortest sector on iRacing at Bathurst. It is quite literally the run down the hill Skyline through the dipper and then out of the dipper before the elbow. This sector right here, very, very small, very short sector, but very important. This sector is a lot of the time what makes or breaks you at Bathurst. It is a very, very difficult sequence of corners, and it really catches a lot of people out. So it's a very important sequence of corners to learn how to get correct. So as you can see here, if we back up to Sector 3, you can see we lift off right before the sector timing point. So as you can see, I'm off throttle later than he is, but I'm also getting on the brakes a little bit harder at a bigger spike going over the crest. And then as you can see, I spike more and then down and back up, and you can see that we're kind of following the same sort of idea in our braking as we come down the hill here. So we crest over the top here. I have a little bit higher of speed all the way down the hill until the turn-in point of this first right-hander at the bottom of the hill past Skyline. And you can see where we converge is quite simply, I'm on the brakes a lot harder during this segment than he is. He is on the brakes a lot more consistently down the hill versus me being on coast, on, off, on again, and then back off through the apex of this corner. Now this is a very important section as well for how much speed you carry. It is very easy to overslow through this section and be safe, but you can't. You have to push as hard as you can and get as close to those walls as possible. It is very, very, very important that you get as close to this wall on this right side as possible before you turn in to the dipper right here. Now, as you can see with my line here, I'm taking a little bit more direct of an approach, whereas he is going from wall to wall to wall. And what this does is this allows him to carry a lot more minimum speed through this corner. Now, something else you'll notice is I'm dropping down to second gear and he is staying in third. And as you can see, if you look right here on the graph, this moment I drop down to second gear, my minimum speed just plummets. And as soon as I drop to second gear, that's a tenth and a half gone, like that. Now, that's something I personally didn't even notice that I was losing that much time, but that's because whenever I would try to go through here in third gear, I would be scared of this line that he's on because I always felt I was going to hit that wall. So quite frankly, I was doing second gear for safety, but it's a tenth and a half. And every tenth and a half that I lose during this lap adds up. I mean, you can see here, equal, drop, tenth and a half, drop, tenth and a half, drop, tenth and a half. I mean, that's huge. I mean, here's a gradual tenth and a half coming up the hill, or back, starting to go back down the hill, and then here's a massive drop right here, tenth and a half of a second right here, just through the elbow alone. And once again, this is a very, very important section of track. So to get it just a little bit off is a big deal. So this is a good way for you to be able to go in and see, hey, I need to try doing this and this and this to improve myself through this section at this track. And it's a very, very useful tool, the data is. So now we move on to sector 5, which basically is just the elbow and then the long, wonderful straight going towards the chase. So as we know, he was faster through the elbow in the section coming down, and then we converge right here at turn in. Now, if you look and see, we lift off at about the same time, but you'll see a big difference here. I'm on the brakes before turn in. I'm on the brakes right here, and then back off again, whereas he just barely taps brake here and more just coasts into the apex of this corner. Then we both get back on throttle. I'm on throttle a little bit longer, and then we're both on the brake pedal as we come down into the dipper, or the elbow, sorry. So as you can see, we once again have completely differing lines here. So I'm staying as far right as possible and then late apexing and exiting shallower and straighter so I can have more exit speed because of the fact that we have such a big corner, or a big straight coming up. So as you can see, once again, just like in the first corner, I am at a lower minimum speed here. So you can see my minimum speed drops down to 53, whereas his minimum speed still goes down to 54, but it's a lot later than mine. So whenever I'm getting down to 53, he's still at 55, and then drops down here to 54, right at the very center of the corner right here. And then he's back on throttle just a fraction of a second later than I am, but because of that straighter line that I have, I'm able to carry just a little bit more exit speed. It's not very much in this case. It's only 1.5 miles an hour more, which is why if you look at this split right here, I lose 2/10 through this section of track. Now, as you can also see here, I ride fourth absolutely perfectly, but then shifted way too early into sixth. I learned after this lap that I really needed to ride the fifth gear all the way until I crest the hill on that straight, which I wasn't doing whenever I made this lap. So you can see that I'm gaining time here, gaining time, and then I start bleeding time as soon as I shift. You know, gaining, 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 shift, bleeding, 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 all the way down the rest of the straight. So now we are on to the final sector of Bathurst. I am around 9/10 of a second down, so I've got another tenth and a half to give up. Now we go into the final sector. So first, obviously, the kink is flat in a GT4 car. So now we go into the braking zone. And if you look, we actually brake at basically identical points. But if you look at the brake trace once again, he gets on it a little bit softer. We both are on and off ABS. And then I have a very weird unspike of brake pedal here. And then coming down into the chase, I'm off of the brake a little bit earlier and on throttle a little bit earlier. Now, this is somewhere where in this car, there's a really big struggle with this apex curve. So if you look here, you see I cut in a little bit earlier and I hit this apex curve and it sends me out wide here going into this right-hander. And what happens in the McLaren is if you hit a curb the wrong way with your inside wheels, that side of the car starts bouncing. And whenever the car starts bouncing, you're going to go wide and you're going to lose a lot of time. Basically, you lose a ton of exit speed simply because of the TC power cuts and the fact that you're not getting the power to the ground. And so if you look here, you see that once again, I am setting up for a better exit than he is. Slightly lower apex speed, but I'm on a trajectory to be faster on exit. But as you can see, because of the fact that I hit this curb here, bounce out wide, have to go over this curb, and then go wide here, he ends up having a little bit more exit speed than I do, coming down this short straight into the final corner. It is what it is. That's just a small imperfection in a lap that, even though it's a small mistake, can cost a full tenth of a second. That's a lot of time to lose in such a fast little sequence of corners, but it's all just a small little imperfection. And that's what racing is. You can go 95% accurate around a track and still be multiple seconds off of the guy that's 99% accurate. So that's the way it is. As we now come down into the final corner, I was actually struggling here a lot. So this is one of the places where I really felt like I was really hoping I would be able to learn from him through here. But once again, we come out to be fairly equal. And truthfully, right here's whenever we get on the brake pedal, I am 1.062 behind. Here on exit, 1.083, but as you can see, I did get a better exit, so coming down this straight, I gain a little bit of time on him, so our last corner is roughly equal. And as you can see, the minimum speed goes down to both of us 54, but once again, I'm braking a little bit harder earlier, and then turning into the corner and getting on throttle a little bit earlier and carrying that extra exit speed that he doesn't have. But in this instant, you do not need exit speed because the timing line is right there. You don't need the exit speed. And throughout the entirety of this lap, you can see right here his steering inputs nice and smooth. Mine all over the place. That's something that I need to try to figure out. I don't know if it's just me running different wheel settings, making it to where I'm subconsciously doing that because of the force feedback. I'm not really sure. But you can see, if we zoom back out to the total lap, you can see just how squiggly my turning lines are compared to his. His are, for the most part, a lot smoother, a lot taller spikes in maximum turn-in angle, and then just a nice, simple, smooth arc most of the time. So there you have it. Uh, that is how you analyze a full lap on Garage 61 and learn from it. If you guys have any questions, just leave a comment down below or just message me if you have me on Discord. I'll gladly answer any questions. And if you want to go over some data with me, just let me know. I used to do this for a long time for myself as well as for other people on Assetto Corsa with Motec. So I know how to use Motec and also know how to use Garage 61. So either one works just fine. Just let me know. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this helped you, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.